for about a minute.
And so you do it on the video.
I know. So tell me, Wednesday nights. Thursday is like Venture Cafe night.
So Maxine Clark spoke.
I know.
Did you go to it?
No, I registered for it, but I had a meeting that, just went on and on and on.
Schedule anything on Thursday.
Don't ever do it.
But I heard Maxine last week. Did you come to the, I think it was, I think it was Prosper Breakfast in Washington?
No, I missed it.
Really? She said two things. You want to start?
No, I'm a Prosper mentor.
Oh, well,
So I see her there.
she said two things that just blew me away. First of all, she trolls Kickstarter. That's how she gets introduced. First introduction to new ideas, new projects that she has the intention of donating to or funding. Yeah. So she does that $100, whatever, on Kickstarter, and then she follows the company. And then she's gone back at least a half a dozen times and actually gone in with some money.
With anybody there?
So she's Maxine Clark.
Yeah, I believe she's got so much dirt in her chest.
Yeah, and she says she picks out minorities and women, and I was like, bravo for you. Yeah.
She didn't know she
Because we're like,
I remember now, it was about, you don't want to spend the money on things you don't need.
and then when he comes back on the whole
And you should go.
these people are crazy.
Yeah, right.
She says,
She wanted me to give her a break.
Some parts of it.
Well, this is what, this was the car.
Let's get started.
She was in the
So I just wanted to mention.
So now the whole time she's like.
Okay, so it's 2:01. Let's get started and people will probably trickle in, a few more people. So this being the last workshop, I thought I'd bring in the big guns. That's why Dan is here. And the second reason why I asked Dan to join me is that I'll tell you a very short story. So when I had my students, I would have Dating with the Angels session, and I would bring in 20 of my angel investor buddies, and I would caution the students that if you have 20 angel investors, you're going to get at least 40 opposing viewpoints, so be ready for it. And I listened to Dan, and what I noticed was that both his style and his content of conveying the idea of how do we tell the story was quite a bit different than mine. I may have grown more cynical in my old age, but so what I said was let's have Dan do his style and his content for 45 minutes, and then I'll do my side. And my side is going to start, with this kind of stuff that some of you have already seen. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. The academic version is no business plan survives first contact with customers. Probably Dan's going to agree with this. Blah, 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 blah in a business plan. I hate writing business plans because out of all that blah, blah, I'm just interested in the relevant information. and I'll talk about, what that is to me as an angel investor. But let us have then, I think everybody knows you here, but let's just have you introduce yourself, and he'll go for 45 minutes, and then I'll go for 45 minutes, and hopefully it'll be a fun hour and a half for you all.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Emery. So hopefully, we don't end up with at the end of my 45 minutes that you just stand up and start rebutting everything I say. I think it's going to be a little bit of line. My name is Dan Roos. I am an entrepreneur myself, and I also work with a lot of entrepreneurs, as well as large businesses. And what I'm going to share with you is kind of what I've learned about how ideas happen and what we can do about it. So the first thing is, everybody familiar with the idea of disruptive innovation? Is there anybody here that's not familiar with that? Yeah, so disruptive innovation, there's a theory of a school of thought that is innovation can either be incremental, which is like the difference between last year's Ford Mustang and this year's Ford Mustang. And those are things you just do to stay relevant in the marketplace. Or disruptive, and disruptive is the difference between the horse and buggy and the Model T. And disruptive things, the reason that we care about them from an economic perspective and from a social perspective is those are big transformative things that really change how things happen. Unfortunately, we have a bias when we hear the stories of disruptive innovation that we hear about Model T and we think it's about the technology. And we're actually going to dive into why it's not just about the car, but it's actually about the whole system that happens, and why trying to just come up with the perfect idea is kind of a fool's errand. By the time we're done, we're going to actually do some things. I might actually have an exercise that I do with people that I'm going to help you guys use that I believe will tee up what Emery is going to do, which is to say, how do you take all of these vague ideas that everybody has in their head and turn that into something that you could actually start testing in the marketplace to start getting punched in the face, as Mike Tyson would say. There's the thing called the Lean Startup Movement, and actually you mentioned Steve Blank, Eric Ries have, this is kind of a popular thing now, the idea to think that when you have an early stage company, you may be producing widgets, and you need to produce widgets in order to figure out what people want and everything, but what you're really producing is lessons learned about the marketplace. And there's just no place to put that on the balance sheet. The balance sheet doesn't reflect that, but if we were to think about Henry Ford, what he was really doing is building up $1 trillion worth of value on the balance sheet, learning what was going to be an automotive business, what did that look like and everything. But, so that there's these phrases that people will use called pivot, persevere, or perish. And that's in this whole lean methodology. You want to get out there, you want to talk to people, and you want to figure out what it means. And then you either want to pivot, which is like, oh, we were going this way, no, we're going this way. Or you want to persevere, yes, we're doing the right thing, and we just need to keep learning, need to keep learning and getting better. Or perish, we're done. It's, this is not going to work. So everybody thinks about entrepreneurs, and they always think about their success. But what you don't know is, this is Henry Ford, and he's standing in front of the 15 millionth Model T. And actually, this is kind of a personal story. My great-grandfather helped him build the first assembly line. And my great-grandfather built steam engines by hand, from scrap metal and things. He was a brilliant machinist, and he said he left Detroit because he's like, that Henry Ford guy is nuts, that's never going to work. But what he's got right here is what he called the quad cycle. And Henry Ford was actually an engineer for Edison in Detroit. He and Thomas Edison were good friends, and he was not known as being the most technically accomplished engineer, but he was known at really running projects well. And he, in his spare time, wanted to start a car company. And this was his first car that he built. And I believe it was 16 years between that and when the Model T actually took off. But he had several car companies that went bankrupt. He lost a lot of investor money. He lost a lot of his own personal money. He had a lot of business models that just did not work. And in fact, the first year that the Model T was out, there was actually a car from a competitor that sold far more cars. His wasn't even the first mass market car. He figured out the best business plan. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to accept the fact that whatever we know today, it's wrong. And we're going to learn over and over again. And I think that's where we're really aligning what we're going to say. The problem is, that's really hard to live with. So you have to, what do I do in light of that? So we're going to actually spend my time talking about how to move from a vague idea that's not right for whatever's ultimately going to happen to something that's got some traction that you can get behind, or to know that I've got no business doing this. And it's not about the idea. So these are just a few examples. The motor-driven car was patented in 1794 in France. Before the French Revolution, clearly the holder of that patent didn't make any money from what happened later with the automotive industry. Apple had an idea back in 1983 that there should be this touchscreen kind of tablet kind of thing that was connected to phone lines that would connect you to data from all over, and you would really want to use this as a way to interact with things. It would replace like a clipboard and a desk and all of these other things. In 1983, it actually took 27 years before the iPad actually became a viable business. And they were making prototypes all the time, trying to convince people this is the way it's going to work, this is going to be great. I don't know if this is true or not. This guy claims that there were 17,000 YouTubes before there was YouTube. 17,000 sites on the internet where you could share videos, vote on them, rank them, post your own, do some minimal editing with them, and get them out there to other people before YouTube figured out a business model that actually worked. I don't know if 17,000 might be excessive, but I think there were a lot when you really look back at it. And then Kane Kramer, and I think this is a great story. You know, he in 1979 patented the idea of a digital music player and thought this was going to change the world. And he actually let it lapse in the 80s because it was clearly going nowhere and nobody cared about digital music. And I think it's kind of funny that Steve Jobs actually hired him as a consultant for a period of time after the iPod took off, which I think was a little bit of a, dude, and just timing was bad. You know, I mean, I think it was a little bit of a gimme, you know? But, you know, it's not about the idea. And we, you know, the Western kind of way of thinking is to think that everything is about our idea, that our idea is the most important thing. And it couldn't be further from the truth. And I'm going to illustrate this point by, this is probably a really bad prom date, right? So, who here went to prom? And if you were either the asker or the askee, think about this. So what would happen at prom if you were pretty shy and Susie was this girl that you had a crush on, and your sophomore year you said, I want to go to prom with her, but I just don't want to, I can't dare ask her out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to learn a lot about her so that I'm right. So you're going to follow her around, and you're going to take notes, and you're going to make count. You're like, hey, I see her wearing purple. I bet purple's her favorite color. And I see her with lilies. She must like lilies. And then on 4 Friday nights, I've kind of followed her home from school, and they go to Olive Garden. And you're learning all of these things about Susie, right? And then what happens if you take that entire high school career and you go up to Susie 2 months before prom and you say, Susie, you've never met me before. You may have noticed me following you, but I know that purple is your favorite color, so I have a tux with a purple cummerbund. I know that lily is your favorite flower, so I have a corsage. For you, that's a lily corsage. I know that Olive Garden is your favorite restaurant and you like the unlimited breadsticks. So we and your 4 friends that I've identified are going to go to the Olive Garden and get unlimited breadsticks in the kind of limousine that I know that you really want. Will you go to prom with me, yes or no?
No.
Right. But you were right about every single one of those things. So it turns out if we stop thinking about being right and start thinking about innovation is not about the idea, but is about a process of change management, that we're onto something. And that's really kind of the essence of the whole idea of the lean startup and what we're going to talk about today is it's not important to be right. It's important to be in the game and having relevant conversations over and over again. Now, you can't also just go up to Susie and say, I've never met you before. Will you go to prom with me, yes or no? That doesn't work, right? We now, in that, you know, I guess it depends on, hey, pull up in your Lamborghini, you know, and, you know, I mean, there's maybe a way that works. I don't know. That wouldn't have motivated me, but no, I mean, you have to, you know, what is something that you have in common? Start a conversation and then move forward and solve problems together. So when you think about it from that perspective, what we're talking about is finding a structure that allows us to take our idea, synthesize it into something that we can really talk about. Because if you just went up to Susie and said, hey, I want to hang out in the library, I want to talk about doing something sometime. That's kind of weird. You know, what does that mean? But instead you say, hey, let's hang out. I don't know, maybe we'll go to prom, maybe we won't. Let's just hang out a little bit and get to know each other. Oh, I do that, maybe. You know, but you got a better chance. So what we need is a way to take an idea and package it in a way that other people can wrap their heads around and interact around it. Okay? So on the right is Steve Blank. So he came up with this idea that there is a whole customer validation process. That what you're really doing with an early stage company is validating that what the customer wants, what the market is ready for, and everything else. Now the problem is, you have the flip side of that is something that's really valuable has never been seen before. So you can't go out and ask the marketplace, what would you do? What would you really like? You know, Henry Ford, to go back to Henry Ford, you know, he said if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So you have this problem that you have to package something in a way so that you can talk to people about it. Now the great news is William Shakespeare actually points us in a good direction. And does anybody know how he wrote his plays? Does anybody know? Did he write it alone? So he was so successful actually, now there's all these conspiracy theorists that it couldn't possibly be one person that did this. And that there are other people that it must have been a team, and it must have been somebody famous because he never could have done it. But the process by which he did it was, he didn't take a play and sit alone and don't leave me alone, I don't want to talk to you about it and everything. He had to produce plays every single week. So what he had to do was he wrote a play and they performed it in front of an audience and he watched to see what happened and then he tweaked it over and over and over again. And he happened to figure out he was at the right point in time when people were having a larger view of the world and they liked hearing about stories about people in Venice and Denmark and all of these other places. And he wrote plays over and over and over again. But his language, he started tweaking it, like, oh, they like these turns of phrases. And so he wrote these plays iteratively, the same way that Steve Blank talks about writing or developing a business. You got to get out there, you got to find out something and get people to react to it. So what I have is, actually I'm going to go back to this in a second. So I'm going to pass these out, and if everybody would take one of these, what I realized was I used to do innovation. So I worked for big marketers. I was telling some people before, I flunked out of college because I was not mature enough to go to class. And they apparently expect you to do that when you're in college. And I worked, I produced concerts, designed haunted houses, worked in factories, worked in high tech, designed theme park and movie special effects, did all kinds of things. And gradually I moved into marketing. And I had a period where I pitched things. Back in 2003, I was talking about why marketers should stop doing television marketing and why they should really focus on data-driven marketing using these things called social networks. And clients wanted no part of it. That's not what we do. And we wanted to let people earn points and do check-ins, and people didn't want to do it. I got an opportunity to work with Major League Baseball on developing a new revenue stream for them. And we had a revenue stream that satisfied all kinds of business needs, but they couldn't do it. In their case, they couldn't do it because they had organizations like that have different stakeholders. And what I learned was the owners, even though the owners wanted the success, well, thank you. Did everybody get one? Everybody? Okay. So in the case of Major League Baseball, the owners want success, but the owners are kind of complacent. So you can't go to an owner meeting and say, hey, we're having this problem, but we're doing this thing to solve the problem, because it's too much for the owners to understand. They want to, how big a check can I cash this month? And so we actually had a new business model that was to help them rejuvenate baseball, get it into the inner city, and build a whole new revenue model to tap some of the sponsors that they were having. And they actually said, you know what, this is probably a good idea, but we can't do it because we don't know how to talk to our owners about it. So I had this thing over and over and over again where I'm like, so it's, it made me a really bitter person. Because I had all these great ideas, and over time you see Foursquare come out, well, that's what we were already doing pitching, that's what we pitched to that client. And then we see something else happening about gamification of business, and we pitched that to so-and-so. And all of these things that never got adopted. And I finally had to say, number one, it makes it so nobody wants to go to lunch with you if all you do is start talking about why you're smarter than the clients. But you feel really self-righteous, so that, enjoy that little moment of time. But what I had to do finally was say, why is that? And I realized it's about cultural change. So I started Openly Disruptive with how do we actually think about change management for innovation. And over and over again, I iterated it. So I would do workshops and I would bring people together, and why is 3D printing important, or why is nanotech important, or why does big data matter in the humanities, or why, you know, all of these kinds of TED Talks and everything. And over again, I was trying to find out how to provide value. And what it turns out is that what I was really good at seeing was how to help people synthesize everything and turn it into a story. And a story is really powerful. So if we get back to William Shakespeare, so one of the great things about that is, who knows what's Romeo and Juliet about? Who knows? Anybody? Yeah, it's unrequited love and tragedy and teen angst and all those good kinds of things, right? I mean, we get what Romeo and Juliet is, right? We get those things. So it turns out the story is actually a really powerful way to bundle things. And what you have is a worksheet that I'm going to walk you through, because I learned that there are a few things. We have tens of thousands of years of human history learning to use stories to fill in the blanks and convey information. So one of the things is, if you tell a story, people know how it's supposed to go, so even if they don't remember hearing all of it, they fill in the blanks on their own and they carry it. The other thing is, a story, if we can tell it really simply, meets the need that humans want to make sense of something. So they want to know these things happen to these people for this reason and how that relates to me. And a story has that structure. The other thing is, if you can turn it into a really short story, it's memorable, because it turns out the human brain can actually hold on to a story that only includes 7 or fewer elements. So you can actually hold that in your head. And the big insight came from, I was working with some people that were getting all ready for their elevator pitches. And their elevator pitches were long-form speeches just reduced down to 30 seconds or a minute, or whatever they had been told for their elevator pitch. And they're really hard to remember, because you're trying to convey a lot, and you spend a lot of time trying to pack all of the words in that. And what I realized was, we want to actually cull everything out of it and actually get down to just the essence of it, because that's what you really want. You want to have them, you want to have somebody have in their mind what to work on, what you're trying to do. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you got a pen or something, we're going to stop right now, and we're actually going to let you guys figure out what you have in your head as a story that could be an idea. Okay? So this worksheet, you should be on the side that looks like this. And this is what I use now to figure out what it is that you're trying to do. And after we do this, then I'll show you how you can use it. But there's a lot of ways. This isn't going to give you your positioning. This isn't going to give you all kinds of things. This is what this is going to do, is this is going to help you figure out what it is you're trying to do. And I just do these myself. I do the art in PowerPoint, and every time I do a session like this, I take notes and see what works and doesn't work, and then I take it back and I print up new ones. And so I'm iteratively developing this, and you'll see in a minute how that works. But step 1, you can read on the left. In 1A and 1B, put the 2 groups or people you can best help in those ovals. Okay? So if you have an idea like, oh, I'm working on a business, or I'm working on an idea, or here's how I want to change the world, put those up there. If you don't have any idea, then just put up there who you think you understand well. Okay? Now, you'll notice that the ovals are not big, and that's for a reason. It's just a couple of words. We just want to start with a couple of words. Next, number 2 says to go down to the bottom ovals. And if you're OCD, we're going to skip number 3, the middle oval, and we'll come back to it. It'll be okay. But the bottom ovals, what are the 2 unique things you're going to bring? Those go in 2A and 2B. Now, if your idea is to start a coffee shop, saying you're going to have coffee in mugs is not a terribly unique thing, right? You can put that in there, but that's not going to, that you're missing the point of launching something new. And if that's the best you can do, maybe that's what you need to figure out right now is, oh, I don't have a compelling idea. I have coffee and mugs, and that's all I've got. The flip side of that is, you can put things in there that you don't have right now, but you can reasonably assume that you could go to market with. So you can't say we're going to have a perpetual motion machine, or we're going to have unlimited funding, or we're going to have peace on earth is going to allow us to do this thing for these people. 2A and 2B have to be something that reasonably you could bring to bear when you start whatever it is you're doing. And then in number 3, in the middle, what's the good thing that happens for everyone when you succeed for these people? And you don't even know yet what you're doing, right? You haven't even put that down yet. So what, is that, everybody lives happily ever after, that there's wealth in the community, in my neighborhood, there's this disease, this horrible disease, there's a treatment for it. What is the good thing that happens for everybody? It's not a good thing to say Susan makes a lot of money. Because that may be true and that may be really important to you, but you're trying to get to a story that you can use with other people. And the average other person, other than your spouse or your kids, don't really care whether you make a lot of money or not. All right? So has everybody had a chance to do that? So now, who's done Mad Libs? Yeah, most of us have done Mad Libs. So exercise 4 is now just turning this into a Mad Lib. So this is just saying, put the things that you wrote in those ovals into this sentence. And now we have a 1-sentence story of what you're trying to do.
I don't know what that is.
A Mad Lib?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Mad Lib was when, I did it in junior high, and it was when you had this book that had all these blanks in it. And you would, in the front of the book, you would and say, give me a noun, give me a color, give me a whatever.
Okay, I did, but I didn't know.
Yeah. I have a 13-year-old daughter right now, so I'm a little bit more familiar with them, more currently. And what we've done now is we've taken everything that's kind of swirling in your head and just put it in a single sentence. And why is that? Why would you think we do that? I don't want to have this be too much of me talking. So Joe, you've been up on the entrepreneurial track. Why do we want to do this simply like this?
Well, you do need to simplify your message, and you need to make it concise. So it needs to ring true with people. They need to get it, but it can't be too complicated or they'll lose them.
Right. Right.
Elevator pitch.
Right, but it's an elevator pitch, but not about trying to get how many words can I squeeze out while the elevator is moving. It's about how can I say something simply, because if we go back to the Susie model,
Yeah. In a way that's relevant.
right.
Right.
You want to get to the Susie, I don't know you a lot. You seem like you have similar style to me. You seem like this. Can we talk? That's what you want to get to, that kind of conversation, because it turns out we desperately want to be right, especially when we're idea people, because we're so used to having to defend ourselves, that when we're not right, we then go back and, oh, I did something wrong. Okay, let me add this other layer to it. We make it more and more complex, and what we're actually doing is making it harder and harder to relate to. So what this does is, if you got on the elevator with Bill Gates, and you had an idea for something with global health, you have a really big idea. If you sat on the elevator and you said, okay, well, I got 1 minute because it's how long between the floors, and I just, here's what I'm doing, here's what blah, 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 blah. And then the doors open, he's like, wow, well, good luck with that. I'll talk to you, hope to hear that you did good things. And he walks away. Instead, what you want to do is, you want to say, Jeff, hey, I'm Jeff, Bill, and I've been a big follower of what you're doing with the foundation. What I'm doing is blank and blank to do blank and blank, and I'd really like to talk about how that matters to the Gates Foundation. Could we set up a time for coffee? And he now knows your entire story in a package that he can remember. Now, if Bill Gates doesn't have enough time, and that doesn't, he's not going to call you back, that's one thing. But if you do that over and over again, the people that matter, you're going to package your story in a way that they can remember, and they can remember why they want to talk to you again.
Seems to me like there should be another blank that says, in order to do this, to solve a problem. Is that,
Yeah, so that's kind of the why. So
yeah.
I'm working right now on a startup in healthcare. So, and my particular startup is about for engaged patients, for patients and those that carry the risk of their health. We're going to use fair data exchange and some natural language processing to actually give them incentives that help them get better health.
So you are saying for the, what
Right.
purpose? Okay.
And so you may not be in any of those space, so none of those things that I just mentioned, if you're like, hey, I want to do something completely different, I don't care about any of those spaces, they may not matter to you, but what I've done now is I've given you 5 different things that are points of entry for you to decide whether we have something in common. Because ultimately what we want is, it turns out that nobody buys anything without a give and take. And what we want is we want them to give us something in return. And we're gonna get to that next, but who would mind reading what they came up with for their 4? So if you transposed everything in to number 4, and trust me, you couldn't, I mean, there's no way to be bad at this because it's an iterative process. So would anybody share theirs? What's your name? I'm sorry.
Christina.
Christina, thank you.
For public health research and healthcare providers, we'll use restricted data and understanding neighborhoods to create awareness of human behavior and environment in relation to health.
Awesome. Did you know that that was what you were working on?
Yeah,
Okay. That's good. That's good. So this wasn't like a, oh.
but I've never put it together like that, and I've,
Right.
used thousands of words now to try
Right.
to figure it out.
So now you've got something really simple, right? So now what you could do is if you got on that elevator with Bill Gates, what could you do?
Hey, Bill.
Right. So if you say, hey,
I'll
Bill,
run out of there, so.
oh, yeah. So, well, that's a separate problem.
Yeah, it is.
Whether you need liquid courage or you need, coaching or whatever, you can get there. But if you just say, hey, Bill, and then you rattle through that and stand there, what's gonna happen? He's not gonna do anything, right? What do you need, what does Christina need from Bill at that
Call
moment?
to action.
She needs a call to action, but what does she need Bill to do? Does she need Bill to say, well, I brought my checkbook with me. How big a check can I write today? Is he gonna do that?
No.
No. What, I mean,
Can
you know,
talk about it.
Set up.
Two-day conversation.
right. Who in your organization should I talk to? If he says, well, our organization doesn't do anything in that space anymore, we're looking around this other thing. Oh, well, do you know who else I should be talking to? So what does Bill Gates want to do? Bill Gates is a powerful person. What does Bill Gates want in that moment? He wants to feel like he's important. If you're solving the problem, then he wants to, okay, great. But the only reason he wants to get involved is if he can contribute. So you're going to ask him for something, right? So that's actually how we build relationships with people. If you think about everybody you actually have a relationship with, you're actually trying to get you're trying to get a relationship where there's a back and forth. So if you're going out for funding, and Joe and Susan, I mean, I know both of you from kind of some of the other stuff that you do. I mean, you would never go out to say, here's what I'm doing, what do you think? And that's not what you want, right? There's no point to have that conversation. So every conversation is, do you think I'm on target? Do you know who I should be talking to? Do you know which market I should be moving into next? Do you know how I can use this to open doors to this, XYZ, whatever. You're always wanting something because it's all about a give and take.
And it's surprising how many people think that they shouldn't ask for anything, but it's surprising the people that I talk to, at least, they do want to help, so.
Yeah.
You gotta kind of dispel that belief that people aren't interested in help.
And Emery, I mean, I'm sure you've seen in your experience that if you go to somebody that's even like, hey, I'm going to try and do an exit to a strategic buy. I mean, even if you have somebody that knows all of the information, do they want to say, yep, just give it to me, roll it up in a bundle, and just hand it to me, and I'll give you a check, and we're done? They want to put their thumbprints all over it, don't they? That's a give and take. So that the we think that the negotiation is a way to solve the transaction, and really the negotiation is a way to get through the transaction.
So does that mean that the investor would want to be personally interested in the project that they're investing in?
Well, so that's kind of interesting. So my experience has been that if you tell the right kind of story, number 3 cuts you a lot of slack. So imagine, so now we're just doing stories, right? So now we're building a story. We've got thousands of years of doing this. So who's seen Star Wars? Everybody seen Star Wars? So we can use this as an example, right? So if I told you that Star Wars was the story about how the cool guys used the best technology in the world to blow up the bad guy's house, is that an interesting story? No. On the other hand, if I say, Star Wars is the story about how the criminals and the idealists get together using spirituality and some questionable technology to bring peace back to the galaxy. Wow, I want to hear more about that, right? That's an actual interesting story because I don't know how it's going to end. So I want to commit myself to, I want to root for these guys. And that bring peace back to the galaxy, like who can argue with that? We're gonna bring apple pie and mom and baseball to St. Louis. Okay, I think that's okay. So that, you know, you want to have a big win for everybody. So now, number 4 on here is you want to get to what are the things that you could ask for. So let's just kind of go through, you know, what are some things that you know, if you're on the elevator with Bill Gates or with anybody that is this person that you want to go further in this conversation, what could you be asking them for?
Feedback.
Feedback?
Connection.
Connections? Money? Now, do you think that, I mean, it's like, do we think that, oh, you know, I would never go in and say, hey, would you give me $100 million or whatever? No. But on the other hand, I mean, Susan, I mean, you were in a situation with your business. I mean, you had to say, I'm looking for X amount of funding.
Right.
I mean, if you just say, I need money, how much? Well, I need you to sign this NDA before I can tell you that. Oh, okay. Have a good day. Right? So you want to have something that is a way for you to have that dialogue. What else did you ask for?
And advocacy, do you want somebody to be an advocate or a champion for you? I mean, that's just probably, in the case of Bill Gates, just as important as getting any money from him. I mean, I donate, but you can say, I've got Bill Gates' approval and working with him, Susan, why don't you write a check?
Yeah. What about asking somebody to be your first user?
Yeah.
Or what about, would you introduce me to people that would use something like this? Or would you introduce me to people that would want to sell in their store or in their marketplace something like this? Right? Would you tell me who would explain the regulatory pathway that this has to follow?
Expertise.
And that's kind of an important step, right, is to get the question right. You have to know a little bit, you gotta give them a chance to give you a little bit, you gotta give them a chance to talk, right? So that you know what question to ask.
Right. Now,
With each question, you're allowing or giving them ownership anyway, which everybody wants, whether it's, you know, I mean, give you money, but if I get an idea from Susan or from Eric, they feel like they help me with my process and have some ownership. It's just like me rooting for the Cardinals or the Rams or whoever else. I feel like I'm part of that team, even though I really don't have any skin in that particular game.
right. What, some other things that you can ask for are, you can ask for, you have this list of people. Would you share that list of people? Would you share your contacts with me? You have a 3D printer. I need to build a prototype. Can I use your 3D printer? And all of those things, it's really interesting that humans want to help each other and they want to be valued. And if you do that, then they're actually on your side. Because you know, if you think about this thing as this change management, you're no longer about being right. Or how can I engage people along the way that are going to help me validate this and move this forward? So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to actually go out and you're going to ask those questions. Now, you've asked that one person, but you need to go out and ask a lot of people. So one of the things is if you're doing something in biotech, people will right away say, oh, well, I've got this molecule, it's like this patented, well, I can't really talk about it, I got this protected IP. So can you do this if you have protected intellectual property? Yeah, you can, because all you have to say is I have protected IP that does blank.
It does what?
That does blank.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I just have to say I have a biomarker that lets me in, that lets me assess the risk of this particular kind of cancer in 3 minutes. I don't have to say how that works or anything else. Because, you know, you might, in the case of a bio thing, you might want to figure out, am I really talking, is this a point of care thing? Is it, you know, what am I really looking at here? And I don't know. I mean, I'm doing the lab work, I'm doing the bench work. Is this making sense? So what are some other people's, you know, what is your one sentence story that you put together? Who else would share theirs? And it's, we don't, you know, nobody else is going to go out there and tell the world what you're doing. It's okay. I'm sorry, Kathy, right?
I'm Kathy.
Yeah.
For new college grads and college students, we'll use a linear system and expert services to create a college to career system to help them get a real career, not
Okay.
just a job.
Right. Okay. So now, you probably look at that and you can say, okay, so I use system and career a lot. I need to simplify. I mean, there's like, there's wordsmithing of that,
Yeah,
but you've actually got a what is it, right?
it's a system to help them get a job.
Right. A system to help them get a job. And then you can go out and you can start asking questions. Then you can go through LinkedIn and you can say, oh, so who wants this? Well, I think that this really matters to community development people. I think this matters to educators, or I think this matters to parents, or whatever. You can go to LinkedIn, you can go out and you can just start finding people that have, searching and finding people that have the things that you just called out. And you just pick up the phone and it's amazing. You can say to somebody, look, we've never met before. I found your LinkedIn profile, or I found you on Facebook, or I found you on the internet. You seem to get this thing that I'm doing. I'm doing blank. Would you give me 5 minutes so I could ask you if this would actually be of value to somebody like you? And I mean, my experience is that 99% of those phone calls, the answer is yes. It's unbelievable. So, but still, it's just a story. It's just fiction. We just pulled it, we just completely made it up. So, to go back to where we're going to be in a few minutes, when we think about Mike Tyson, the punch in the face, or the, all of those kinds of things, how do we know that this actually means something, that this isn't just us with a crazy delusional thought?
People.
Yeah, you're going to talk to people and you're going to keep improving it. And so that's what the backside is about. So who else has got another one before we flip over to the backside? So I want to pick one that we can work on together. What's your name?
My name is Sandy.
Sandy?
What I just wrote was connecting children in underserved areas of St. Louis with a community of established artists and mentors to nurture the next generation of success stories.
Okay, awesome. So if you went out and you asked people that, and what would, so somebody just say, what's your reaction to that? So do you feel like you get who her actors are? I mean, so we think about what we really have is, if we're talking about a story, these are the characters up here. And this is the plot devices that are going to move things forward. And this is the moral of the story, right? So do we get who her characters are in her story?
All the way up till the end, and then I was like, and we're gonna do what? I got the artist and somebody, and then it was gonna do something, and I got lost.
So
Okay.
if you heard that feedback, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure about how.
Okay. So now,
I'm assuming because she said artist, but she didn't specifically say that,
so is this something you've been working on?
So I've had different versions of this, which I feel like this is the most simplified thing I've done.
Right.
And so this is kind of an experiment because
Right.
my other versions have been more involved,
Right.
but still succinct. Anyway, I just tried to take it in a different direction, and I feel like it's a bit bland,
Right.
but it seems like it's coming off like
so
that
what
as
makes
well.
this a better story? So if we were reviewing this, if this was a movie, what would make this be a better story?
Okay, as a writer, I would remind everybody to use action verbs and use nouns or names or something. So Susie teaches Billy, how to answer his phone, or visual artists, you gotta put a little detail. Visual and performing artists teach children 16 to 18 how to perform, act, create art, self-express something. But you gotta have, it's gotta be action or verbs.
So it turns out, even if you don't like Tom Cruise, whether you, I don't want this to be a
Not
Tom
sure
Cruise
who's
bashing.
running.
So, but whether you like him or not, you want him to be a specific character that you can figure out who he is. If he's just Tom Cruise and it's kind of vague, you can't relate to him. So we want to be specific. It's the same kind of thing. What I heard when you got so simple that what I would call the thing, what you're bringing, your secret sauce, is vague. And
Right.
nothing I can relate to, so there's nothing specific. So I need to, even if you say it's about big data and nanotech, and I'm like, how does that relate to artists? At least I'm engaged in the dialogue.
Right. Okay.
So you want to be specific. So people want to see specific, but when you're specific, they fill in the blanks and they associate their own meaning with it. I'm working with some people at a big transportation company, and one of the things is, it's like, so if you say, we fly this kind of plane, people are like, oh, okay. But if you say, we fly planes like, it's like, well, do you fly other planes? I mean, because I'm also interested. If they want to make it their own. So you want to get that. So who else has got one?
I got one. So for college coaches and student players, we'll use centralized communication and practice optimization to create a team that wins the college competition.
Awesome. So to create a team that wins the college competition. So is that something that you, I mean, is that a cool goal? Yeah, I mean, it's like winning, that's good, right? I mean, even if you're on the other team, you know, all of these sports movies, you know, the other team lost, and people still want the movie to win. So when you go out and ask that question, and we actually had a conversation, so Manuel and I know somebody in common about this thing that he's talking about. And one of the things that I happen to know about this is, if you talk to people about practice optimization, it's like if you were talking about software, this would be like a workflow kind of thing. So how do you make it so that the practice works well and everything? And it's not the most sexy kind of thing in the world. It's certainly not the most athletic or, you know, or anything like that. However, if you turn it around and say, what we want to do is actually, we want to make it so you spend more time coaching and less time organizing. That becomes real powerful. So the person that he's working with actually went out and asked these questions and found out that the players, even though they're important, they are not the most important part of this equation. It's actually, this is really serving the coaches to make it so that the coaches can be the best coaches they can be. And he actually changed to say, turns out that especially when we're looking at youth players, which was what we were talking about at the time, youth players, the players could care less. It's like, oh, I'm going to happen, my dad makes me do that. You know? But if you say for the parents who stand around with their Starbucks cup saying, I can't believe I'm paying for this, you know, this is disorganized and what's going on, they really want a practice that runs well. The coaches really want a practice that runs well. So he was able to go out, and then he came back, and he took this thing, and the very next time he had players and coaches up here. And the very next day he was like, oh, it's not players. Turns out it's parents and coaches. Because the players are all like, if I had to do, I mean, it's a free app, right? I don't want to pay for that. The parents and coaches were like, well, that's worth like hundreds of dollars a season. I mean, that's some value add. So, imagine that you're going out with your idea now, and you're going to go out and you're going to ask these people, and you find them on LinkedIn, you find out whatever, and they come back and give you some feedback. What do you do then? Do you start from scratch? No. So what I want to do is, in the few minutes that we have, in just a couple minutes here, on the back is a series of exercises. And by the way, if you want this, either I'll give you my card afterwards, or you can email me or whatever. This is an open source piece that I'm using, but on the back is a series of exercises to use to solve the problems that come back. And so one of the first ones over here is, you know, if you think about how would you do this for whatever scale that you need to do this at. So if you were building planes, well, we can't say I need $1 billion because we're eventually going to make this many of these planes. But you can say, well, for plane one, here's how I'm going to do it. And we're going to do, I mean, we're not going to do this all with custom machining and all of this other stuff, but for plane one, here's how we're going to build it. And here's who we're going to sell it to, and here's why that's going to work. Once we get up to 100, then we're going to look at this new market. Once we get up to 1,000, we're going to look at it this way, but you actually take each one of those things and you figure out what they exist at each scale. So it's a way to think about scale, because, and then look at it different ways, because that'll help you think about, oh, these are assumptions I'm making that I need a huge engineering solution. You have more economic value, the more it's outside your silo. So if you have just a technology solution and it doesn't solve a burning business need, or it doesn't solve a burning need for people to see social change or cultural change or whatever, it's probably not very highly valued. Understand your audience. This thing shows a little bit, I build this profile of who Openly Disruptive helps well. Understand your audience and how they self-identify, to know that your characters are actually resonating with them. There's a great book called Little Bets, which is like, you don't bet the farm on changing the world. It's like you would say, what can we do that's a high opportunity, low risk way to test this out and improve this? But we're not, you know, if I'm Washington University and I say, hey, we want to explore the idea of having a campus in the Arctic Circle because it's all about, you know, climate change and everything. Well, I'm not going to start with, well, you know, all of our campuses have pink granite buildings and they all, you know, hold at least 1,000 students. I mean, you don't do that, right? You're going to figure out a way to do it at a low risk. You can figure out, are you really objectively, do you matter to the people you're talking to? How to tell the sub-story. So if one of the pieces is technology, if your technology back end doesn't align with the bigger story you're trying to tell, you have a disconnect, and it's probably not going to work. What can you do if you need to add a new audience? Somebody says, hey, veterans are really important. I know you thought you were doing this for grandmothers and moms. You know, how do veterans work in? Well, it's like, all right, so are we thinking that this is actually a new thing, that we're getting rid of either moms and grandmas, or we're saying moms that happen to be veterans and their grandmothers? So you can, but you still have to come back to 5 circles, because of, or 5 ovals, because otherwise your story, you start losing people. And then the last thing is, think about where you are in time. When I told you about my the business I'm working on in healthcare, I've been working on that for 3 years. And when I started doing that, it took about an hour. Even with people, really bright people at organizations like Intel at the very top, that understand global health and they understand all the drivers, it took about an hour to get to explaining the first part of my diagram if I would have done it like this. Because it was all new territory then. So the world was not ready for my idea. If I had tried to raise money and invest money and do all of that stuff, I would have been throwing it away. The world wasn't ready for it. So what you want to do is figure out how the world is ready to have the conversation you want to have, and then apply resources at the right time. And that's, I mean, I think that's how we can get to this idea of, you know, how can you improve the odds that of the 17,000 video sharing sites, yours has the potential of something like Google. So that's it. It's just a tool to develop a story. Emery is going to talk about how you validate the story, how you ask some tough questions about this, and why you're going to hear some tough answers and everything, I'm assuming. I mean, and I'm willing, you know, I'll stick around afterwards and answer any questions. And if you ever want to, I do this over coffee. If you ever want, I'm glad to meet you for coffee. If you buy me a cup of coffee, I'll do an exercise with you, and we'll talk about what you're trying to do. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so this is a good way of capping off this week, because I had 2 business plan competitions, finals this week. One of them was called the Bear Cup, which is a business plan competition for faculty that have an invention. And so, for example, one of them was artificial blood made from nanoparticles, like synthetic particles, so that if a soldier is shot in Afghanistan, you take this pouch, you mix it with some liquid, inject it into the soldier, and the blood starts circulating, and oxygen is delivered to the right place until the soldier can go to the hospital. So in that case, you know, can we ask the customer, would you buy this? Well, you know, that process could be very shorter. So in some cases, we have some other risks, like technical risk and so on. And it's interesting to think about, you know, which of the principles that I'll talk about and that Dan has talked about apply when to what types of ventures. Because the next day, which was yesterday, I think we had the social enterprise and innovation competition, which is non-profits and social enterprises. So for example, in that case, the team was teaching villages in Africa how to set up a bakery to bake bread using local materials available. So how do we distill these things and put them into categories that make sense to us? Anyways, somebody desperately keeps calling me over and over again. So most of you saw this. This is going to be the gist of my talk. So I'm a little bit, I suppose, downstream from Dan. I assume that you had an idea and you asked some questions, you developed the idea, and now you're ready to face the world with it. And the world in this case will be investors to whom you're going to ask for some money so that you can get the train out of the train station. One thing that I wanted to add to Dan's comments based on my experience with the Bear Cup 2, I think one of the things that really differentiates good entrepreneurs from not so good entrepreneurs is the following. When I run an idea by a person, I have essentially zero interest in positive feedback. I don't need them to tell me, oh, it's a great idea, fantastic, okay, those are already in the pocket, you know, I don't need to hear them again. What I need is your negative feedback. What flaws do you see so that I have a chance to fix those flaws if possible? And what happens is when I even talk to faculty, tenured faculty, that completely confident about what he's doing, as soon as you deliver negative feedback to them, all of a sudden you see this defensiveness, which is a terrible thing to do. You're kind of limiting your own self by not listening to negative feedback. Hear it and then decide whether you believe it or not. Okay, so as some of you know, I've been an angel investor for 15 years or so, and we get a tremendous amount of applications for investment, something like 400 per year. And for various reasons, we, generally speaking, will not read a business plan. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't write the business plan. You should write the business plan for your own sake, to put a snapshot of your ideas on paper. But what we do is we'll listen to a PowerPoint pitch, and then we'll bombard you with questions, if we like it, for a day, 2 days. And what we expect you to do is to be able to regurgitate whatever it was in your business plan on the fly. If you have to look up, oh, that information was on page 25, let me find it, that is not a very good indication to us. The second reason that I don't like reading business plans is that it gives you too much places to hide. Lots of words, lots of paragraphs, lots of places to hide, I don't care. So when I'm reading a business plan, I flip the pages and I'm looking for numbers. A number. Can they explain that number? Is that an important number? Can they benchmark the number? As many of you who have heard my prior workshops, I think a business plan is a defense of the numbers. Eventually things boil down to numbers. So when I read a business plan, I'm seeking out, I don't know if you can read it, among the blah blah blahs, the relevant information that there may be. What is the relevant information? So people come to me and say, what do you think about my idea? I have no idea. You should hear it from the horse's mouth. Your customers are going to decide what they think about your idea. Asking me is premature, probably. All I can say is, I heard about a company like this, or 78 other companies like this that tried to do this thing, and this is what happened to them, therefore I think this is what's going to happen to you. Otherwise, I'm not a prophet, I don't know what will happen to your idea. So to give you an example, I come from the state of Arizona. There's an Innovation Challenge grant. They give out $250,000 of a grant per company. Large sums of money, and I'm a judge for this competition, and the very first question asked to the judges, not to the applicants, but to the judges, is customer engagement. So that's the #1 thing. If you're able to demonstrate customer engagement, then who am I to say whether your idea is a good idea or not? So the things that impress us are things like this. This is one of my student teams from the University of Arizona. They launched the company. 6 months after operation, 10,000 users, 20,000 downloads, 18,500 in revenue. Check, customer engagement. Otherwise, we have this beautiful product, oh, it's so nice, and it's so much better than this one, blah, 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 blah. Show me some traction. Do you have traction? So they were acquired by a large company that's in the education business and ended up with a good tech. Here's another one of my student teams. So they were trying to, Noto was selling notes that student takes in the classroom, like Physics 100 notes, and they sell those. And the student who created the notes gets a commission. That's what Noto was about. And they had an exit. Howdy was in the business of collecting internship experiences from students. Like I interned at GE in New York, and all they had was have me deliver coffee and Xerox papers, so I hated it. That may be useful information, and here is where I spent my time in New York, blah, blah. So they would collect that into a database and then give a commission to the source and try to sell it to students. So they went and surveyed 150 students, and their survey said that 49% of the students would pay $10 or more for an internship guide. Great. 49%, if we can get in front of them, they're going to pay $10 or more, so we should invest in them probably. But there's a test that you can do at very low cost. So they sent an email to 539 registered people. And the bottom line is, even when they offered the internship guides for free, forget about $10, out of 539, only 2 people downloaded. So my question to them is, if you can't give it away for free, how are you going to sell it for $10? So how much did this cost them? Essentially 0, this test. And what did that save us? It saved us money as investors, but more importantly, it saved them time, right? So, what would be our expectations if you were, at WashU about a business plan? So we would want your business plans to be superior to Apple's business plan, which may sound like a challenging thing. So let's take a very quick look at Apple's business plan for just 2 seconds here, this being a Friday afternoon. So this is the Macintosh business plan, actual business plan from 1981. And page 1, right? So a little bit of a contents, table of contents, and then page number 3 of the business plan. Product hardware comparisons, microprocessor, memory size, weight, the most important things that should go into a business plan, obviously, pricing schedule, onwards, integral disks and add-on disk sizes and so on. Again, page number 4 of the business plan, obviously screen size comparisons, the slots and so on. Let's see. I currently know of no products being developed by the competition. Unfortunately, this doesn't mean there aren't any, is the competitive analysis section. Going down a little bit more, the advantage of a product line is that each individual product does not have to do everything. This is like, pontificating a little bit, and today is the first day of the rest of your life in there, and, that's pretty much the end of the business plan. So here is Jobs' product timeline. This is what he foresaw, Lisa and Mac and so on and so forth. So we laugh now, but I'm wondering whether, what was this, 1980? 30 years ago, whatever? So I wonder whether people will be laughing at the business plans that we do today, saying that they're so archaic and so silly. What were these people thinking? And that also indicates that, you can have this type of a business plan and still create Apple. I want to give another example of a fantastic business plan. So this is from the Harvard Business Review. So this was an 80-page business plan. If you're in academia, you can download it. It's 80 pages long. I would never have read it. It was a perfect business plan. I only read it because I was teaching it. And people invested $28 million in the company, and in 2 years it went belly up. Belly up meaning 28 million gone, and 0 results. So again, back to Dan's point, how did they fail? As investors, we have observed, and this is again my opinion, is that the more money we invest, the more stupid mistakes founders are going to make. The less money we invest, the more creative founders are going to have to be, the more practical they're going to have to be. So when I cut a check for $28 million, I'm almost asking these guys to fail, to deploy the capital rapidly. The first thing they did was they were at Harvard, Boston, obviously, went to the best place possible, mahogany desks and so on, that has got nothing to do with the success of the business, and went belly up. Here's another business plan. So this was one of my students. She went in from the University of Arizona into a business plan competition, 20-year-old lady. Out of 100 or so business plan submissions, she won first place and won $50,000. But the critical thing about this was that I'm going to get to is our objective in writing that business plan was to win the $50,000 business plan competition. It was not a business plan for investors. It was a business plan designed for a business plan competition. And we said we're going to go in and win this, and we went in and won it.
Would I have invested on the basis of that business plan? No. So we're going to get to that in a second. Another business plan. So the mother of all business plans is when you're going for an IPO, initial public offering. In essence, you write a business plan. I recommend that you can find this on Google, that you read the prospectus of Groupon, with which they raised $750 million. And when you read it, it is, again, storytelling. So this guy, the founder of Groupon, starts talking in a prospectus of this type. You know, the 5 of us started Groupon, and initially we tried this, and that failed, and then we tried this, and that failed. So he also tells a story, but yet it's as I say, the mother of all business plans. So the thing about writing a business plan, this is, you know, telling the story, wrapping everything up. I used to apply for a lot of grants. They're called SBIR grants, Small Business Innovation Grants. And what I felt like was that it had to be poetry. Why did it have to be poetry? Because I had to pick each word as if I was a poet. Why? Because the dollar amount that was dependent, the dollar amount that I would get from the grant per page was $21,000. I don't know how many words there are in a page, but that's the worth of each word that I'm picking. Same thing in a business plan. I'll show you some examples now of how carefully people write executive summaries, essentially, and then mapping it onto business plans, wordsmanship. Let me pause there just for 1 second to demonstrate this to you, what I mean by that. Yeah, so this is again one of my student teams. And this is the executive summary. And I want to focus on the one-line pitch. Now we get a tremendous amount of applications. So the thing is, if I'm not interested upon reading that first paragraph, one-line pitch, this will go in the not interested box. So you have to hook me all the way from the first sentence and then keep me hooked until the end of this 2-page document. So that's why it's so important, the word selection. So this company is an online gift-giving service that introduces a proven business model. Now look at the use of the word proven. What they're saying is, hint, hint, Mr. Investor, the model that I'm showing you is a proven one. I just don't have the time now to write more about it here, but I put the word proven in there because if you ask me more questions, I'll show you how I proved it or how it was proven by others. And bridging consumers' brick and mortar and online shopping experiences. So for the knowledgeable person reading this, people like to go touchy-feely, buy something physically. At the same time, they like the convenience of online shopping, so hint, hint, Mr. Investor, I get a new thing that will tie these two parts together, of those two experiences. And to the $125 billion gift-giving market, once again, a message to the reader, to the investor, that we're in a very large market, $125 billion market. So each of these words, as we go down the line, are selected carefully to reflect this thought of the value of the words that you're writing. The word empathy is, I think, another critical component of being a successful entrepreneur. And what empathy means is, as it's written there, intellectual identification with what's going on in the head of the person that you're sitting across from. If you don't have that ability, you probably are not going to succeed as an entrepreneur. It's almost a must. So first, you have to determine who is the audience, who is reading my business plan, as an example. Is it an angel? Is it a VC, an executive vendor, partner, etc., etc.? And what you're trying to do is, this is something that has worked for me fantastically, both in grant applications, in pitches, in business plans, and so on. And the idea is this. you read what you wrote, and you try to imagine what's going on in the mind of the person reading that particular sentence that you wrote, what type of questions could be coming up in their heads, and you preemptively answer those questions in the next sentence. If you're successful at this, imagine you have now created a bulletproof application, a bulletproof business plan, because you correctly anticipated the questions and you answered them preemptively. So imagine you're the reader now. Well, yeah, but how about, next sentence, here is the answer to your what about question. Okay, blah, blah, but how about, next answer to that question. What does that require? The only thing that it requires is that you anticipate the audience correctly. And sometimes it's difficult because in SBIR applications, for example, there is a group of scientists and a group of business people. Combination makes the decision as to whether you get the money or not. So what do you do under those circumstances? You write it such that the business person can understand the lay language, and the scientist also understands that you have the depth of knowledge necessary. It's just that you're using simple language so that the business person can understand it. So when you have two audiences, it's even more difficult. You have to pick your words extremely carefully so that both groups understand what it is that you're saying. A safe thing to do is, those 6 vulgar words in the middle there. What's in it for me? Assume that every stakeholder is asking what's in it for me, and then answer the questions, what's in it for me, to all the stakeholders, your strategic partners. So you have to anticipate what it is that the audience is looking for. So what's a first-class business plan? I call it zero fluff. So when students used to deliver their business plans to me, I would just go circle, 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 fluff, 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 meaning there is no new information. We're going to use Facebook, Twitter, and other social media for our marketing purposes. What did you tell me? Anything at all? You just gave me fluff. So I'll just mark it down as fluff. Don't waste paper by putting things of that type. The thing to remember is always specificity implies credibility. Instead of it's a huge market, it's a market consisting of 560,000 people in the United States. Our system is much better than others. Specify how much better, in what sense is it better. This way, when I'm reading the plan, I'm learning something new. Much better doesn't mean anything to me whatsoever, and I don't care. Yeah, so say nothing that is obvious and conveys no meaningful information, and the example that I gave you here. If you read the business plan, you will see a ton of this stuff where it's really not saying anything at all. Same example that I gave. Be quantitative and specific whenever possible. We know that the business plan is partially hand-waving. Who knows what's going to happen 5 years down the line? But that is why we want extreme specificity in the short term. So one of the things that we're asking for from the VARCAB applicants, for instance, is use of funds. We'll use $50,000 to do small animal testing. Not going to work. $50,000, we're going to get 200 mice. The cage cost is going to be X dollars. We're going to pay somebody $12 an hour, and they'll inject the mice with this pharmaceutical and monitor the response. At the tail end, having spent your $50,000, we'll be able to tell you of the 200 mice, 180 of them died and 20 of them survived the pharma. This is applicable to any. It doesn't have to be pharma, it doesn't have to be. So we're going to put a Google ad, and of the 100 people who click through and come to our website, we're going to demonstrate that 26 of them entered their email address and got on our mailing list, and 3 of them actually bought something from our site. Yes, sir.
Can I ask questions? Or
Surely. I tend to just go,
okay.
Yeah.
So I think about the business plan competitions that are out there.
Yeah.
And these are forms that you're filling out.
Yeah.
And you're limited to a certain number of words.
Yeah.
So I think about how they ask the questions and whether or not you're using, what you said was you were trying to be specific, but it was wordy, right?
Yeah.
So how do you, in something that's prescribed as a form,
Yeah.
rather than in
I
a
got
business
you.
plan,
I got
how do you optimize that
I
kind
got
of an approach?
Understood. Let me see if I can find it here. It will take me a few seconds. I think the question is worth me going to Dropbox and pulling this file that will best answer the question.
I find myself reading those business plan competition forms and saying, I don't think they're asking the question right.
Yeah. So this is, I agree with you. This is the form that professional angel investors across the country use. And we do impose character limitations. In other words, you cannot exceed the allowed space in any one of these areas. It's a 2-page document. And this has been tested with, tens of thousands of startups and many thousands of angel investors. So I'm going to assume that this format has withstood the test of time. And so all the business plan competitions that I will be involved in at WashU from this point on will impose this structure on applicants. So for example, the thing that I mentioned to you up here is I'm going to do this. This is the specific activity. I need this many dollars to achieve it, and this is, Mr. Investor, for your $50,000 is what I'm promising to deliver you by this date. Because everybody is going to fail. Nobody is going to deliver this, on time and on money. But if you completely miss it, how likely are we to invest a little bit more in you? We will not. Right? So in one of the prior workshops, we talked about how do we come up with these numbers and how do we defend them. Now the space is limited. Let's look at customer validation. This is the amount of space that we give them. So the company's concept has been validated through primary and secondary sources, including consumer research and surveys. So blah, blah, according to a survey, which I would discount in my mind, I gave you the example of how good surveys are. And then we were able to test our algorithm by sending out 4 gift suggestions at retail prices to 50 adult males. So what these guys are doing is, even though I've been married for 20 years, I have no idea what my wife likes and doesn't like. So what these guys do is my wife goes to a site, or I can go to a site and I just answer a few quick questions, is she an outdoorsy type or is she an indoorsy type, blah, blah. Then they give me 4 gift suggestions. I can pick as many as 4. They will send all 4 to me. My card will be charged. And then either I or my wife will pick the one that she likes best, and at no charge we return the remainder back to the company. And so this is what they tested. And on Valentine's, they did an actual test. 94% of the males approved of at least 1 gift, 71% approved of at least 2 gifts, and 94% said they would use, Givalo was the name of the company, for future gift purchases. And then our initial projections are based on a 10% return rate. Return rate meaning that all 4 were returned back, so that would kill their profit, obviously. So now that is something that is believable, and actually they did it, and that shows some type of customer traction. Would I bet $50,000 on the basis of that level of traction demonstration? Unlikely. It depends on how much of the company I get, kind of a Shark Tank type thing. And then they have this. See the specificity embedded in a sentence as short as this. The average cost of customer acquisition through these marketing channels will be $32 to $35. So it will cost us, we'll be willing to spend $32 in marketing money to gain 1 new customer. And once we gain that new customer, his lifetime value to us in terms of profits is going to be $250. So this is intriguing to me because they're saying that you spend 32 to 35 to gain a customer and we'll make 250 out of that customer. This is a first date situation, right? They're just trying to get the first date with me. This is adequate information for me to say, I'll give you a first date, explain to me how you came up with these numbers and with these numbers over what time frame, what benchmarks do you have to make me believe that these numbers are correct? Yes, sir.
I think you just made my Easter. For the last 2 months, I have been checking out books from the library to write, essentially, I'm pre-revenue, I'm also pre-MVP, to write 30 pages on, excuse French, BS.
Yeah.
I know what I can do now,
Yeah.
but I have been battling, and I'm a writer, I've been battling with writing 3 pages on customer validation, sales and marketing, all of this stuff, when I know it's impossible.
Yeah. And nor will, you know, unfortunately, entrepreneurship, everything that I say, I preface it by saying, in my opinion, or this is what I do, because as I keep saying, it's not biology, physics, chemistry. In my opinion, very few people will read your 30-page business plan.
But everybody asked me for it.
Yeah, of course they do.
SBA
Yeah.
asked for it,
Yeah.
this one asked for it, that one asked for it. It has been paralyzing
Yep.
me.
Yep.
Because I don't have a business background, but I don't know what this is gonna do.
Yeah.
And it's taken me away from actually going out
Exactly.
and doing stuff.
Exactly. So what is the solution? There are 2 solutions that they may not fit you, right? So one thing about entrepreneurship is the ability to leverage. What that means is if I'm forced to write a business plan for SBA, I'm going to write it in a way such that with a few modifications I can turn it over to a funding agency as an application. Shoot 2 birds with 1 stone.
Right.
That's one thing that I could do. The second thing I would do is, I know that this will also take time, but you have 2 choices. One, spend time to write a 30-page business plan, or spend time to find the people who say to you, I'm not going to read your business plan anyways, I just want to talk to you and ask you a zillion questions and see if you can answer those questions. Because there's lots of redundant information in your business plan that I may not care about. And also, in the question and answer session, I'm also testing you as a founder. Are you getting defensive? Are you able to answer quickly? Are you able to think creatively, you know, in a street smart fashion? All of these things are not available to us upon reading of a business plan.
Well, I kept wondering, why am I repeating myself in this? And it's because I'm trying to write 3 pages for each of the categories you have.
Yeah. So that, unfortunately, that does not happen in the world that I live in, outside of WashU, where a business plan is seen as an academic deliverable also, but even an academic deliverable, if we're going to pretend that entrepreneurship is a legitimate academic discipline, fluff is not allowed in a PhD dissertation, therefore fluff is not allowed in a business plan either. So, presents evidence of capital efficiency. So if I were writing a business plan, one of the things that I would brag about in my business plan is what have I been able to achieve on sweat equity alone? I spent, you know, only $500, and this is what I was able to achieve. Now imagine if you give me $5,000, what I can do. So let me jump to this area. This is, as I said, kind of like dating, right? So if you don't get the first date, then nothing is going to happen. So there are 2 ways to approach this first date, getting the first date, in my opinion. The first one is a very pragmatic approach, and it's applicable to certain categories of ventures. And there you try to answer these 3 questions initially. Who is the customer? And particularly we're interested in who's the paying customer, because eventually somebody has to reach for the wallet and take out some money. And if we don't know who that person is going to be, you can have the most wonderful idea, but it won't fly. We see this all the time in the medical field, because the patient is typically not the payer, it's Medicare or the payers, and they have their own reasons why they pay or why they don't pay. So asking the question of who's the paying customer, what is the customer's pain? So some of you may say that Facebook did not really cover a pain, or that people didn't have the pain to have computers on every desk and so on and so forth. Yes, all true. But if you can demonstrate the customer pain and make us understand and believe that the pain exists, and you can tell us the depth of the pain and the breadth of the pain. If I were you, I would focus on pain that is deep, but not too broad, because if it's too broad, the big boys are going to attack it anyways. So find a niche group with a deep pain and start there, trying to fix that pain. So the depth and breadth of the pain are important to us. And then this is probably another, very important thing for us that needs to be answered right off the bat. What's the customer's next best alternative to your fantastic solution? You have the best solution, okay, I agree. What's the next best solution that the customer has? I'm not calling it even a competitor. Not doing anything is a solution, an alternative to the solution. So we need to understand deeply what that next best alternative is. So this is the very pragmatic approach. The second approach is to answer these three questions. Questions are, why are you doing this? The big why. You have to have a compelling answer to that question, otherwise it will not fly. There's a zillion people with the same idea, as Dan was saying. Why you? What makes you special that you will be able to do this when nobody else has? Explain to me why you are special. And then the why now question. So whenever we receive an application for investment or an idea, one of the things that we're looking at is it too early or is it too late? So too late is awful because it's a me too play. Everybody else has this and you're going to have one too. We're not interested, pass. Too early is also extremely dangerous for us because we will commit a lot of money. So the examples that Dan gave, this is strictly from the investor's point of view. If it's too early, he showed you 4 places where people got burned by being too early in essence. And then there's the sweet spot. If you can demonstrate to us the following. If you can say, I know this is going to take place 5 years from now. I don't know if I will be able to do it, but I know that it will happen 5 years from now. Somebody will do it. And if you convince me of that in 5 years from now, I too agree that this will be done. We just don't know who's going to get there first, then I may take a bet on you because it's in the sweet spot of where you need to be. So, we practice evidence-based medicine, right? Everything is based on show me, right? Data-based medicine. So we need to exercise also evidence-based entrepreneurship. So the questions that I ask founders is, what evidence can you give me today that this is likely to work as advertised? So you think it's going to work this way and that way, but show me evidence. What do you got today that should make me believe you? What evidence can you give me today that it will take X dollars and Y years to prove that it works as advertised? What's the solution? What's the answer to this, the easiest answer? Well, here is company A, B, and C. They did something similar, and here is how much it cost them to accomplish that. And you don't know how much they spent, but you can find out how much they raised in capital to achieve those goals. So you must answer this question also. Again, what is the next best alternative to your invention, current and anticipated? And probably this is the key question. This is one that I want to emphasize in the last few minutes here. And a typical investor is extremely reluctant to give you $100,000 to build your widget. But that investor may be more than willing to give you $10,000 to give me evidence that if you build it, before you build it, that they would buy. And in terms of the questions that Dan was asking, the first question that I would ask to anybody would be, if I were to build this and it worked like this, would you buy it? And that's how I start developing the confidence, and it's going to cost money, no question about it, to even get an answer to this question. But this is, in my opinion, best use of initial money to answer this question. I see a lot of students who come to me and say, you know, I just need money to develop the app now. And I ask them this question, and if they can't answer that, then it's premature to develop the product. You just have to have a simulation of the product. The word we use is fake it before you make it. Right? So you can't fake artificial blood. It doesn't apply all the time. Nothing in entrepreneurship applies to all cases, but in a lot of cases, especially tech-based cases, that can be done. Again, wearing an investor's hat, or even now the government's hat, even the NIH is asking this, except return on investment is defined as impact. Impact investors are asking this question. So, what evidence can you give me today that there may be an acceptable return on investment? I'm going to give you. Assume that it works as advertised and show me some evidence if it works as advertised that we're going to get a return on our investment. How do you do that? Once again, through benchmarking. I think benchmarking is the key. Now you can go outfield, you know, outside of your area. You just need to find the comparable. A believable comparable. A few more seconds left here. Let me see what else I can show you. So if you were forced to do a business plan competition, so this has been a fairly effective outline of a business plan competition in cases that I've dealt with. Executive summary, problem, solution, target market, etc. We'll make this available to you. And what I would suggest you do is that the starting point after Dan's, you know, elevator first contact information, the second serious thing that happens typically is a approximately 10-minute PowerPoint. So if people try to send me business plans and I say, send me a pitch deck first. And most VC will do the same thing, you know, send me the pitch deck. And so you could try to correlate, roughly 1-to-1 if you possibly can, the information that's in here into a PowerPoint presentation. Here is again, one of my student teams, they gave me permission to, this is from Arizona, to use this. So this is what a typical, in my opinion, good PowerPoint pitch would look like, what the system would look like. As you can see, mostly images, few words, the process by which the transaction would occur, kind of coupling user interface with the features and the benefits, you know, of the process, nice and clean. And here's a benchmarking. So this is what I was talking about. Mr. Investor, you should believe that this will work because we're going to give you an example of a company which used the same methodology and it worked for them, except that they're not competing with us, so that's even more wonderful. So Trunk Club, what Trunk Club does is it sends you like 5 shirts and you get to pick 1 to 5 and return the rest back to them at no cost to you. And you pay for the one that you picked. So they raised $12 million, $40 million in revenue in 2013, and they have 30,000 users. Trunk Club does. So what they're saying is if Trunk Club can do it, we can do it too. And in fact, ours is even better because the paying is stronger. There are lots of men, allegedly, who don't know, you know, what type of gift to give to their wives, and maybe vice versa. I don't know. My wife never gives me any gifts. But how are we going to make money? So average gift price, cost of goods sold. As you can see, you know, very crisp, straightforward, bam, bam, bam. No need to try to prove this on this slide. Date by date operation. First date, second date, third date, etc. So this is the validation of the business model. And then they say, look, it's not just us. We're surrounded by PhDs in retail and consumer science, psychology, buyer behavior, So we're not just a group of students, we know what we're doing. The secret sauce is not our features because they can be copied easily. The secret sauce is the people that we have basically. So they say summary, right team, right solution, right time, and they're done. Yeah.
So this would be a pitch to a future investor?
Correct,
And
correct.
so it doesn't say what they do with the money they raise?
It's further down the line.
Okay.
So we give them, in this particular case, I think we gave them a 2-minute pitch.
Okay.
And of the ones, like 5 were selected to give a 10-minute pitch. In that case, they would have shown the use of funds slide that I showed. Many times when I get for example, in the Bear Cub, honestly, after looking at the summary, I would go straight to the use of funds. Because if the use of funds is vague and fuzzy, it's a no-go for me. Right? So that, and if it's very specific, then it gives me a reason to read on the rest of the document, because obviously this person spent some time thinking this thing through, as opposed to free money, let me just go and apply for it.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Any questions? If you want.
That business plan is a good template. You said that is a template that's like, where can people find it?
Yeah, so we posted, Jessica, where do we post it?
We'll post all of the materials on the YouTube along with the video of this session.
Now, if you have everybody's emails, I think everybody gets an email from us, is that correct?
I think we've actually gone to just posting everything on the YouTube channel where it's University.
But you have to tell them where the YouTube channel is, probably.
If you go to sc.worcester.edu, our homepage, there's a link right on the left that says YouTube. It'll take you right into our channel.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, SC, like Scandalaria Center, .Wustl, W-U-S-T-L, Washington University.edu.
And where is on the page?
On the left-hand side, there'll be links to the Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
And then worst case, you can send us an email.
Or email me
Yeah.
or Stacy, and we'll get it to you.
Okay, thank you much. Enjoy the next event.